What's up, friends? Welcome to another 6-1 Showcase developer interview. My name is Kyle from the 6-1 side of things, and today we are talking about CorpoNation, the sorting process, along with the devs of Canteen, Vicky and Sam. Vicky and Sam, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, real good. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we are obviously recording this pretty soon after the game was released. It'll be, by the time everyone gets to see it, it'll be like a month later. So how has the initial response been to the game?
It's been cool. It's very weird having, because this is our very first video game release.
Oh, sweet.
It's really weird having it out in the world and seeing people play it, and then seeing people that understand, like, kind of get it as well is really gratifying and cool.
I think with a game like this, you kind of go into it knowing people are either going to get it or they're really not going to get it. So it's nice to see people having fun with it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Before we get into the game and a little bit more about that, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourselves and your history as a game developer?
Sure. Well, we started Canteen in 2020. We'd been planning to do it for a really long time. We hadn't worked in the games industry before. We just made stuff in our free time. We decided, right, let's set a date, let's save up, let's do it. And then started, our first week was the first week of the UK lockdown. So it's really weird timing. It's one of those things you can never plan for.
Yeah.
And we started making CorpoNation a few months later after trying out a few different projects.
Yeah, first prototype was summer 2020, and then it became our full-time game maybe 6 months later or something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Quick follow-up. What about monotonous office work was your go-to for first game?
Well, I used to be a web developer, but before that, I had a bunch of jobs. Well, I worked in a few call centers, and they were kind of a source of inspiration. But I think generally, because of lockdown and the way the world was operating at that time, people seem to be thinking about work in new and different ways. Maybe I can work from home and I don't have to give up hours of my day for a commute. Maybe I can spend more time with my family. But then there was also people who were being forced to work in unpleasant conditions. And it just seemed like an interesting topic to get into.
It's such a relatable thing for so many people out there as well.
Everyone's got to work.
And everyone's had a rubbish time at work at certain points. Yeah.
Similar when lockdown started, I think that's the reason why I grew attached to Animal Crossing that came out right around that same time, because it gave me something to look forward to, a strict chore list of things that I had to get done that day. So I completely understand that sentiment for sure. What about those very everyday things that a lot of people do for work? What makes that fun for a game setting?
So I think maybe a little bit about it is what you were saying with Animal Crossing. There's a routine and a familiarity to it, and you can kind of role play and get lost in it. And I think there's fun to be had just in doing a job well. I think the sorting itself, people can just find that part of it very fun without even imagining it's work. It's just I've got this nice repetitive task that I can do a good job of. Yeah, and then layering that with the kind of just living your life and having these different things you're checking off.
I think one of my favorite games is Stardew Valley. I love giving myself a task list in that, and I love the being able to set a routine is comforting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was watching one of your recent dev diaries before the game was released, and you guys were talking about being shocked at how many people who play tested the game were so diligent about paying their in-game bills. Which is, it's such a mind-numbing, and everyone hates paying bills. The fact that it's something that they religiously checked in a game, I find very funny and amusing. What other things from the playtest stood out to you on that kind of same level?
I think it's not quite as gripping, but one of the things we noticed was how people really responded to just they're kind of little Easter eggs, just little moments where the game responds to you. in a way that people don't expect it to. So like stuff like and slight spoilers, but hardly, like you can press the alarm button in the elevator and something happens, like, or if you're spam clicking on Ringo, something happens, or if you report emails that you shouldn't be, something happens, like,
yeah.
And every time one of those moments happened in like kind of these playtests, it was just like the joy that appeared on someone's face. It was like, oh, we've got to add as many of those in as we can.
Definitely.
Like,
That's great. I love that. You hinted at it a little bit right there, but there seems to be something sinister happening over there at the Ringo CorpoNation. What are some of your favorite things that you've done that hint at things being that way, and things aren't entirely as what they seem in the game?
I think maybe like we seem to have like created an atmosphere of like surveillance, which is like
very Big Brother.
yeah, and like it wasn't necessarily our intention to make that like the main thing that people get from it, but I guess it kind of comes out naturally, like when you're talking about working for like a big company, people, you do feel a little bit watched, and you do feel like maybe you can't always trust your coworkers, which is, you know, something the bosses foster as well. So yeah, I like that we managed to get the sense of like being watched in there almost as a kind of like natural follow on from it being about work. I was pleased with how we did that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. Yeah. Looking at the game, it's very striking because, and I'm a big fan of the limited color palette you've chosen, like very blues and whites and splashes of color, specifically red when things go wrong. Like,
yeah.
What was the thought process behind having such a limited visual kind of like identity?
I think part of it is just wanting to stand out, I guess. And then when I was doing like just exploration for the visuals of it, I think I'd kind of settled on pixel art, but just exploring like how that pixel art might look. Like I happened across the blue and white version, and it reminded me of like stuff like a Minute, I think.
Yeah,
it's like with the just the black with like white highlights, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, yeah. I don't really have a sophisticated answer to it.
No, that's great. Any answer's a good answer.
Like one of the reasons it really felt like we should go with this blue once Sam had started designing with it is like, I've always remembered this thing that Matt Groening said about The Simpsons, how like he made them yellow because when you're flicking through TV stations, you will always be able to tell when The Simpsons is on one because they're all yellow.
Very true. Yeah.
And it felt like, we should do that. We should make our game be blue and everyone can see it whenever you're just scanning past it.
Absolutely. What has been like the most challenging part of making your very first game?
Lots of challenging things.
I know that's a loaded question.
I guess because the game we've made is a little bit niche, like the self-doubt and the like self-questioning the whole time, because we didn't get anybody playtesting it till quite late in development. Like, is anybody actually going to want to play a game about being at work? And like, we've had lots of people ask us like, why would someone want to play a game like that? And so like keeping the faith about the idea has been like quite challenging at times. But yeah.
No, we relate to that very hard here at 6-1 Indie, because when we first did our first showcase, like, are people going to watch it? Are people going to care of these people who haven't made a name for themselves showcase indies? And there's always that little bit of self-doubt that rings in your head. So I completely get that for sure. But it seems people love it, which is great. Yeah. I know, Matt. Great, I haven't had a chance to play yet, but one of our team members, one of the writers and a voice on the podcast, Matt, absolutely loves CorpoNation.
Oh, cool.
So and he just loves the whole vibe of it. So you guys hit it out of the park for sure. Not a game related question, but since this game is about a job, what has been your worst work experience in your life?
Ooh. Like worst job or worst experience at work?
Ooh, both, either or, whatever you're more comfortable with sharing.
For about 3 years, I worked in like a charity shop, so like a secondhand shop,
Mm-hmm.
and the stuff people donate.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Actually, I don't think I should say, but it wasn't good. But also just generally working in call centers, I think.
Yeah.
Like the worst part about it for me was like you have a headset on and the phone is ringing and you're waiting for someone to pick up, and then someone picks up and they're really mean to you for 5 minutes, and then it hangs up and then it starts ringing again, and it's just like constant for like several hours until you get a break. That's my worst experience.
No, that doesn't sound good at all.
Mine is less like graphic, I think, or like less terrifying. Like, I think it's just the reality of working for a company that demands a lot of your time. So doing overtime permanently and then waking up early to do overtime for a different time zone and just doing that for years on end is like a lot. Like, yeah.
Oh, to add to it, one of my worst ones, I was a groundskeeper at a local baseball park, like where little kids would play baseball, and there was a playground right in between all the fields. There were like 3 or 4 of them, and during the games, it was peak games. There was games on every field, hundreds, thousands of people there. Another kid who's just on the playground decided to go number 2 down the slide.
No.
And as someone who is in charge of making the park clean, having to clean that with everyone looking at you was not one of my favorite moments.
Oh my god.
That sounds horrible.
But you know what?
It's bad.
That actually happened in the secondhand shop where I worked, in the changing room. We didn't know until after the person had left. But yeah.
Why? How? I just don't. You know what? Those questions are better left unanswered, I guess. Before we wrap up here, we've been asking everyone that we've been sitting down to do interviews with for the showcase this question, and this question has no wrong answers, so don't feel any pressure about that one. But what does being indie mean to you?
Oh, that's a juicy one, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
There's lots of discourse around it. I think maybe it's probably more of like an attitude for me. Like, I think you can be indie and still have a team of like 20 people in premises, or potentially even more. Like, it's more about kind of why you're making games and the means maybe you have to do it. Like, I think if you've got massive amounts of funding, like that kind of gets in the way if the funding is influencing what you're making. I think like if you've got massive amounts of funding but you're still just making something that's completely non-commercial, like you're probably
true
quite
to the
indie
vision,
still.
But
a vibe, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a vibe.
Yeah, it's a great vibe. That's why we cover it. It's great. Well, Vicky and Sam, thank you so much again for allowing us to show off CorpoNation, the sorting process on the March showcase. And thank you for joining me to talk a little bit about your history and a little bit about the game. We're super excited.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
If they want to play CorpoNation, because it's out right now, where can they find it and more updates about you and the team?
So you can find CorpoNation on Steam. Just search CorpoNation. It's the blue game. And then you can find us on TikTok, or we've got a Discord as well that you can join and chat with other kind of beloved employees working hard.
Awesome. Oh, I just remembered another question that I forgot to ask. Why a raccoon for like the mascot?
It just seemed right.
Yeah. When I sat down to draw it, like we knew we wanted one, and then I turned to Vicky and was like, "What animal am I doing?" And you just said a raccoon. Like,
I didn't even make the Tom Nook connection until after. But yeah,
I didn't make it until right this moment. That's awesome. That's great. Well, thank you all for, of course, checking out the showcase and all these interviews. This is one of, I think, the final total is 20 interviews up on the site. So please go check them out. Support the devs. As always, all the information about CorpoNation and Canteen are on our website. So go check out 61indie.com/showcase. You can find all that info there, as well as all the other games. Thank you very much for watching, and we love you, and play more indies. Bye.